Yeah, buddy. Matt here with Angry American Dads, and of course, I'm joined by the big man Gaetano. What's going on, brother?
What's going on, Matt?
Oh, just living the dream, living the dream.
Nice. Little tornado warning today, huh?
Yeah, tornado warning,
What do we have?
monsoons.
Freaking three in 1 week in northern New York? What
Yeah,
the hell?
Lewis County, Lowellville's getting pounded and flooded again.
Yeah, they flooded out down the road from me.
Oh yeah, Watertown got blasted.
Yeah, it was
I mean, blasted.
sideways. It
hmm
was it was horizontal rain. I was like, holy shit! I seen this in Florida, but
hmm
man,
I looked out. I had a hard time seeing the road from the front of my house.
yeah. I
I
was
was
like,
going,
whoo.
oh shit.
Even my wife's like, man, I haven't seen this in a while since I was on the island.
Yeah, that tells you it's
Yeah,
bad.
buddy, that's funny.
Well, the aftermath of a tropical storm, and we got it.
Yeah,
Oh well,
yeah,
what are you gonna do?
happens.
Although I probably should never say this, but I honestly could do with like 2-3 weeks of no rain.
Yeah, we got to dry this out. It's soggy.
Yeah, I got plenty of water to water my gardens and my trees and everything. I just need 2-3 weeks with no rain. We'll
Yeah,
see what
let's dry
happens.
her out. Let's dry her out.
See what happens. Anyway, we're gonna tear into this. Don't know necessarily like when people are gonna stumble onto this episode, but we just recently had
An
I'm gonna
incident.
say mentally challenged young individual decided to go to an extreme level to bring violence against a presidential candidate.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm willing to bet money that he had no idea the true repercussions of his actions, whether he succeeded or not.
Right.
And I'm willing to believe that, and from what I've seen and everything else, he had no background in any sort of training, any sort of martial arts discipline, any sort of
I had a lot of anger from what I'm hearing,
yeah,
which is what we've been talking about.
yeah,
Anger with no outlet. You get
yep.
stupid shit like that.
But there was no training. There was no activity to pull that out. There was no activity to temper that or discipline that, so to speak.
Yeah.
I do find it funny on a side note that I think both of his parents are therapists.
Yes, I did read that,
And
and like I said, we read that on the interwebs, and we know everything on
yeah,
there is 100% correct.
yep,
So
100% sure, yeah. But I am going to say from my own personal experience, because being in law enforcement, you handle a lot of domestics. I will say this: some of the worst people to raise children are psychologists and therapists. Just saying.
unfortunately, yeah,
Uh,
unfortunately,
anyway, but no, I want to delve into the violence side of things, and I guess where I want to go with this is you're seeing young people today bring and use violence, one that they have no idea what the consequences are. They obviously have never been trained in it, and there's a reason I bring that up, but they suffer from all the stuff we've talked about before: the depression, the anxiety, the anger, and all these other things prior to this. And the reason I bring all that up is because you and I are both heavily into training, whether it's
heavily into violence.
yeah, it's whether it's unarmed martial arts, jujitsu, boxing, Muay Thai, whether it's armed with like a blade or a stick or a knife or something along the line, Pikiti, Filipino martial art, whether it's firearms. That's a big part of what we do. We train in all these things, and we make a point of having our children train in it too. And I've had people come to me and say, "How can you train your son or your daughter in this?" And they can't understand it. And I'm going to use a quote that was given by a man by the name of Jeff Cooper. Let me bring this up. I apologize, I didn't have it right handy.
No, you're good.
And the reason I do this is because it is 100% true. People don't like it, but it is 100% true. I did have it. Apparently, I'm losing my marbles.
Dead air.
I apologize, folks. I did have it. I really did. Oh, right there. He was asked this. He's like, if I did not agree that violence beget violence, I told him that it is my earnest endeavor. He was a big firearms trainer. He opened up gunsight training academy to train law enforcement, military, and civilians. Or not gunsight, but Thunder Ranch. Excuse me, Thunder Ranch. I told him that it is my earnest endeavor to see that it does. I would like very much to ensure, and in some cases I have because of his background being in the military and whatnot, that any man who offers violence to his fellow citizen begets a whole lot more in return than he can enjoy. Now, I think that's really important because what a lot of people all of a sudden don't tend to understand is the only way to stop violence is with violence. A bad guy with a gun, a bad guy with a knife, a bad guy with anything, whether he's in a truck trying to mow people over, whatever, the only thing that's going to stop them is a good guy that knows how to be violent and is armed. So I look at this, and with all that being said, we watch these kids resort to primal action. They take anything that resembles a weapon. What do? They go out and they try to do something. They intentionally, if we look at it, we look at school shootings, we look at everything else. They look for the weakest targets possible because
Yeah,
they don't want to. They want to go as long as they can without facing consequence.
it's the same thing with bullies, man. They don't pick on the big kids.
Mm-hmm. Exactly. And with most bullies, the moment you turn around and you meet their violence with the same level or a greater force of violence, it stops. It's the number of times I've dealt with it where we will have a suspect that'll come out and it's a younger person and it's obvious they didn't think about it. They just start lashing out, they start doing whatever. And all of a sudden they're met with somebody like us that is, we meet or exceed that. And we put them down on the ground and we're like, we're done. The look of shock that comes across their face at what happened. And I think at one, it's shock because it happened. But two, they're like, wow, this hurts. Yeah,
That's the
it
other thing. Yeah,
does.
it does hurt.
And that's the other part of it. These kids are inoculated from the actual consequences of what happens. So, one of the things I did want to get into and why this is huge and important for dads, especially, you touched on this in a short you did in regards to aggression with your son. And part of the reason I'm tapping this too is because you teach jujitsu to younger children. You teach kids classes. So do me a favor. Why do you think, I want to know your thoughts on this. Why do you think it is important? And I know you and I think very similar on this. Why do you think it's important for us to do this, for us to teach this?
So, jiu-jitsu in particular is there's so many things that you learn. It's some parents come in and they want their kids to win tournaments and they want their kids to, actually that's a lot of it. They just want them to go to a tournament and get a trophy. I see a lot of, but when I'm on the mat and I see the kids, I want to give them the level of comfort under quote unquote fire that I have. A lot of people don't understand that, uh, when you're training jujitsu and a lot of people just don't understand jujitsu period. But part of what I train and teach jujitsu for is comfort under pressure. If you can be comfortable in a very shitty situation, especially with somebody my size on top of me trying to choke me out, that ability translates into life. You can handle higher pressure situations without losing your mind. So you and I talked about a little bit before this about the switch.
Mm-hmm.
The switch was introduced to me. I had no idea. So the first fight I ever remember, and it's not like I was in a bunch of fights. The first fight I remember vividly, I remember the beginning and the end. I don't really remember what happened in between. I
Yep.
got told later, but it was fourth grade and I was being picked on. And I remember being hit in the head with a basketball. And then I remember getting up off the guy who hit me in the head with the basketball and looking at his face filled with terror. And I had for lack of a better term, I don't know the psychological, you know, nomenclature, but I snapped.
Hmm.
Scared the shit out of me. I was like, what the hell just happened?
Hmm.
And growing up and it kind of gave me a little bit of confidence. I was like, I took on a bully. And then unfortunately, in the next few grades, I might have tried to take on another bully that was a little bit bigger than me. It didn't work out so well. So I got the other lesson, right? So
Hmm.
I learned where my switch was, or that I had a switch and I could
Yep.
snap. And then I learned just because you beat this one doesn't mean you're going to take that one. And I got like Jimmy Snuka and put in like a headlock. And I was like, dude, I give. That hurts, right? So I took that lesson, those lessons, just quiet through high school, went through sports, a lot of high contact sports, hockey, anything where I could hit somebody. I ended up playing. It wasn't that I wanted to hit somebody. I just like being rough.
Hmm.
And then you go to college and I'm a bigger dude. I get to college, start bouncing, getting some scruffs there. And I slowly started to see that usually the louder guy is the one who's more scared.
Hmm.
The quiet guys were always the one who've been in a bunch of fights and just don't want any part of it because they
Hmm.
know it hurts or they're going to hurt somebody.
Hmm.
So back to your point, I want my kids to learn jujitsu. I want my kids to learn contact sports for two reasons. I want them to be put in a situation where they lose their freaking mind because there's a limit of stress that people can take. And very rarely nowadays do you see people pushing themselves. People call it anxiety. It's not anxiety if you're really getting hit in the face. It's actual fear.
Hmm.
If we could take fear to a level in a safe environment where they go past that and they either panic or push themselves past that point where they lose control in a safe situation where you can help them kind of increase the level of stress they can take,
Hmm.
then it has long-term effects because it had long-term effects for me.
Hmm.
If we can increase the level of stress that the kids can take in a real stressful situation, not what's in my head, not anxiety, not what I'm imagining, what could have, should have, would have happened. But if we can take them to a level and help them control that, and then let them know that there is a time to let the bad guy come out,
Hmm.
because there is a time where that level of stress needs to be uncorked so that you can eliminate the real danger in front of you
Hmm.
and then come back to center. You can't do that by just talking. You have to actually put somebody in that stressful situation. And I learned that from Nate, from Mark McFan,
Hmm.
from watching them put fighters through this, because you always had fighters coming through saying, I want to go to UFC, I want to do this, I want to do that, until they really got wrecked.
Hmm.
And they would either come back in the ring, learn from the mistakes that they made. Even the guys in our gym, some of them, they're great in sparring. They go, they get beat up, they come back in, they train, they get better. You
Hmm.
can only do that if you can take that level of stress and then unleash that stress on somebody else. Some of the nicest guys I've ever met are some of the most dangerous people. You know, there's several times we've been to seminars, we go to training, and you shake a dude's hand and it's nicest guy, and then you look on the wall and he just wrecked some dude. There's
Yeah.
pictures of him just wrecking somebody, and you're like, that dude acts like he couldn't hurt anybody, but is just a monster. And
Hmm.
that's what you and I were talking about. That's who you got to be today if you want to protect your family, if you want to protect your kids, be a productive member of society. I think Jordan Peterson puts it very, very succinctly, is you have to know that you're dangerous
Hmm.
and then control it. Those are the
100%.
most productive male members of society. And I'm talking about males. I'm not talking about females because
Hmm.
I ain't going there.
Yeah, that's
But
a whole different.
it's a whole different ballgame. So I think if we start young, two things. I want them to be able to take that level of stress and handle that level of panic, because that that will increase their ability to tolerate that and decrease their ability to lose their shit and go shoot somebody.
Hmm.
And um, I want them to know how it feels. Because a lot, I see this today, and Curtis and I were talking about it the other day. A lot of kids in school, they will kick and beat and bully because they don't know how it feels on the other end of it.
Yep.
So if we, in a controlled environment, if we can cause a little pain, that is going to tamp them down, because I've yet to see a kid, on the mat accidentally hurt a kid and not feel bad about it.
Yeah.
I've just never seen that, because they were playing, they got to a level where things went a little bit too far, and we catch them before they get there, but it still hurts. If they get excited and pull an arm bar, we'll catch them before they tweak it a little bit, but it still hurts.
Mm-hmm.
And if another kid starts crying, 100% of the time, the kid who did it on accident will just back off. That
And
kid is not going to go out and beat the shit out of somebody randomly.
and right there, you're building actual empathy.
Yes.
You're
Yes. I
building
hurt you.
actual
I feel,
respect for other
yes.
people.
Yep. And
And then
I
you're
go,
also building discipline, because now the kids are starting to realize, wait a minute, this
be
does
careful.
do this.
Yeah. Yep.
I have to use this judiciously and only under certain circumstances.
And they start to understand. Another thing that they start to understand is, at the beginning of the class, we have warm ups, body exercises. It's all about body control. Because
Mhm.
if you're not trained and in shape enough to control your body when you have to turn up the volume, then you will hurt somebody.
Mm-hmm.
Because that's why we have the white belts rolling with the higher belts, because they don't have the body control. We don't put brand new white belts and white belts together, because they usually
Bad
end up
things
hurting
happen.
each other.
Bad things happen.
So
Well,
that, that's why we train. That's why I train jujitsu.
mhm.
The JKD and the Kali, that's body control, slipping. That's a whole nother thing. But that's mainly
Mhm.
jujitsu. Yeah.
But it's also, it brings your level. You train this stuff. It brings your personal level of what you're capable of up higher.
Sure.
So
And
in turn,
confidence.
and here's the thing: you have confidence. You bring up your level of skill, and in turn, you start to realize what these martial arts, and I'm going to include using firearms in that,
Sure.
what these martial arts are capable of doing to people.
Right. And then
And
you just avoid the situations, because
exactly,
this shit's gonna hurt.
exactly. And the thing is,
Yeah.
you also start to understand, it's like, when you know what this is capable of, you sit there, and when a situation starts to come up, you're like, what is this worth? What is this going to cost? And that cost, it could be something. Yeah, I might defend my family, but if I take this the wrong way or do this the wrong way, I might end up in prison.
Yeah.
So all of a sudden, or at the same time, you know, example I have, incident that happened. I remember sitting there, and there was a very young child witnessing the situation. And I'm so thankful. I am so thankful that it turned out the way it did, because the level didn't escalate past a certain point. This child didn't witness it, and it was not injured in the process. And this is the one thing that I like to say when it comes to training and everything else, because if you do have to use it, especially as a man, you have to use violence to protect yourself, protect your wife and children, any of your family, friends, whatever. You better know what the hell you're doing, because if you react, like you said, that switch flips, and you react and you don't have the training, you react in a very primal, animalistic manner, you may cause
You're gonna
pain and
cause some damage.
destruction to those that you're trying to protect.
You're gonna cause some damage to them, and you're gonna cause some damage to yourself too.
Yeah. And, you know, maybe you, I think you would agree with me on this. It's one of those where it's like, if the damage comes to me and I'm putting myself in that situation, that's one thing.
Yeah.
Man, if I'm the cause of the damage that's to my family or my friends, and they weren't directly involved, oh man. Mm-mm.
Yeah, dude. I mean, that's one thing that I give Mark McFan all the credit, and Nate all the credit. They sit us down and they say, if you're out with your family, bring your firearm.
Mm-hmm.
And we asked him, I forget what the question was, but he basically said anybody can have a good day and
Mm-hmm.
tag you. He's been fighting for years. Nate's been fighting for years, and they say,
Mm-hmm.
if you get to hand with your family and they tag you and knock you out, you just left your family exposed.
Yep.
So
And
so fighting for honor. Somebody calls me a name, fighting for honor, things like that. Nope,
nope.
I'm good. You can call me whatever you
Nope.
want. I'm going home.
Yeah, exactly. It's one of those where, and this is the other part of that training side. Now you're getting into what you just said. We know when you've trained, you know what pain is.
Oof, yeah.
And let's think about this. It's I've had to use this stuff outside of training,
Yeah, that's
and
how
I
many
have
of
been
your
punched
stuff.
in the face, broken my nose, freaking everything else. And I know just hell if you and I sparred that I got knocked loopy a few times.
Yeah, you got sneaky elbows, man.
But but it's also one of those that it's like when you're sitting there and you're doing that, somebody wants to start calling you names. Somebody wants to start using bad words. You're like, cool. You might have the anger rising, but you're like, we're not going down this path. We're going the other way.
Yeah, we got nothing to prove.
And it's the thing that gets me is you look at all these people screaming about words being violence, and it's obvious that they have more issues than they're ever going to care to admit. And they're all the same generation. They got a trophy for everything. They're all the same generation that freaking never got disciplined. And I'm willing to bet money that this kid that just went off on died on a rooftop
Yeah.
would not surprise me in the least if he was one of these kids that freaking words hurt me.
Yep.
And I honestly think that's why he was there. He listened to a rhetoric that's been preached and preached and preached, and he's like, "Oh, I got to do something about this because it's all, dude. It's words.
Yeah.
It's words. Move on." So incredibly weak-minded, and again, this is one of those things that ties into the physical end of it, ties into the mental end of it, to where you build up one strength wise, the other one gets stronger also.
Yeah.
It, I think I really think that this is especially for dads, because of our role as protectors, because of our role as providers. It is our job to make sure our children understand this and are exposed to it and deal with it.
Definitely
Um,
no.
oh, 100%. I'm going to delve into a little bit on my daughter with her training. She's done a couple different types of martial arts,
Yeah.
but she only did jits for a while. And
Might be.
I, I'm not gonna force her.
No.
It's, but it's one of those where she does other stuff. She does train with firearms. She does train with edged weapons, but it's one of those where I never will forget the first time she went to jits and rolled with a very girl, a little bit smaller than her,
Yeah.
actually. And she got rolled around pretty good. And the
I think
girl
it
had a
was
little
there.
bit more experience. Yeah. And she
Yeah.
was holding her down and she couldn't get up. She started crying.
See, yeah, that's usually what happens.
And I remember, and I did at that point, we made her go back a few more times.
Yep. I remember.
And I remember there was a while where she was actually rolling with a bigger kid towards the end, bigger boy. I mean, he was being nice.
Yeah.
He was. But he was putting pressure on her. And trust me, I know how uncomfortable that feels. Folks, for you that don't know, I weigh about 180 pounds. Big man here weighs, let's say, well over two.
190. I don't know what you're talking about.
Yeah, I'm very svelte 190. Let me tell you something. He freaking drops his weight when he's freaking rolling with you.
I don't know what you're talking about.
It's substantial, okay?
I'm a
It will
fucking
literally
panda, man.
crush your chest and you can't breathe. But with that being
Oh,
said,
stop it.
hey, I'm kind of jealous. It's one of those things. It's one of those where this kid is doing that to her. He's applying his body weight rate and he's just holding her down. She can't breathe. But I'm watching her and she's focusing and she's like,
Yeah.
okay,
She wasn't
I'm not
panicking.
dying.
Yeah.
I can do this. Because and after she quit, we had a long conversation, and the conversations come up again. This is going to be something. I'm going to try not to go too far with this one, but it's one of those where hopefully the first 2 years of her college, she is going to be close to home. After that, she's going to be going away for a couple years, and I don't know where she's going to end up after that. And it's one of those where she understands dad cannot be there to always protect her. But with that being said, she also understands that as small as she is, she's a tiny little thing. That it doesn't. She could. I think if the guy had no training, unless he's like a really really strong dude, she's gonna be able to get away from him.
Mhm.
I mean, as it was, the one day I laughed my ass off. Her current boyfriend's 6 foot something tall. He's a big farm boy, and she managed to toss him, like freaking roll him across the freaking living room, and I just about fell out of my freaking chair laughing my ass off. and she can, as much as her brother would hate to admit it, I'm pretty sure she can kick his ass. Um,
Yeah,
but
I got money
I
on that.
digress.
Hmm.
But it's one of those where I said, you understand that if you ever are put in a horrible situation, someone's holding you down, they may be able to. You may have to sit there and say, okay, no matter what's happening to me, as long as I'm not getting stabbed to death, as long as I'm not getting shot, what can I do to live through this? And what can I do to fight back if it is attainable for me to do that and still live and get away with it
Yeah,
and live? And we've had some very in-depth conversations, and I can have that, like you and I could have that kind of conversation talking about somebody else.
sure.
Doesn't bother me. I will say this: having that
About your daughter?
conversation with your 18-year-old daughter, and I walk away and my guts are in a freaking knot.
Sure.
You know,
It's it's a very scary thought.
yeah, but I do have the positive of it is when she was done, when we were done talking, I'm sitting there and I'm like, I hope and pray that never happens, but it's one of those that she at least has the mentality. She's like, Dad, I understand this may happen to me, but you're giving me other tools to work with. And I'm also, and she's also working on being much more cognizant of what's going on around her, situational awareness, so that she doesn't put herself into that situation. And that's the other part of it, situational awareness.
Yeah, situational
But,
awareness. Yep.
but it's one of those where that initial training, as much as people were like, well, it didn't amount to much. No, I truly believe it did.
Oh, she got, yeah, she does. She may not know what she got out of it, but I watched.
Oh,
She
yeah.
got the majority of what we wanted her to get out. Calm in a really shitty situation. Yeah.
Yeah. And there's been a few times since then where it's, I've watched her do something and you can tell it pisses her off or you can tell it really scares her or upsets her, but she's like, I'm not dying. I can get through this. And if that's the only thing that comes out, I'll take it.
And
I'll take it.
you hit on a good point, man. And I think we talked about it before, but like our particular society is so insulated because of the rules and the law that we have. Like, some
Mm-hmm.
people may say now that, everything's corrupt. Well, unless you've been to a third world country or outside of the U.S. at all, you don't really understand how insulated you are. And
Yeah.
our entire society is built on the threat of violence, and the police have the ability to execute that violence on you. But when you go to other third world countries, there's no cops, or the cops are way too far away where everything's going to happen and you're going to suffer. And I've read a few books on, especially about having a daughter, wanting to know the psychology of certain
That'll lead
things.
you down a rabbit hole.
Well, one of them was
Yeah.
very interesting, and they talked about the stress response in some women is to shut down. So when being attacked, aggressors will stress the female out so much that she will either exhaust herself or she will shut down. So my thought is, okay, how do we train our daughters to calm themselves? And jujitsu is one of them. Henry Gracie did a great seminar. It's online where, you're being attacked by a larger man because that's, a larger man's going to attack a smaller woman, but you let them into your bubble so that you can choke them out with their shirt.
Mm-hmm.
You act the part, you act exhausted, you kind of give up and let them in. And the only way that you're going to be able to do that is to train that level of contact. You and I always talk about the ranges of violence, that's close quarters. If you don't
Mm-hmm.
train close quarters, you're not going to be able to do that. Or the alternative is your body's going to shut down.
Mm-hmm.
And then there's all kinds of bad things that happen out of that. So that's just like you said, training violence doesn't make killers. It just doesn't.
No.
The Marines, they make killers. The Army, they make killers. That's a whole different training level. We're
But
talking about
that's, yeah.
training
And
violence.
even with that, though, it's, you look at Nate, perfect example.
Yeah.
Yes, he's trained in that. And look at the number of guys that we know that are military. I went through
Mm-hmm.
it.
Yep.
A bunch of guys I know. I mean, I laugh hysterically. It's like I love running into old vets and talking to these guys. And in my firearms dealing business, that's been one of the things, one of the perks that's come along with it. And for instance, it's like there's a gentleman who lives not too far from me. I'm not going to mention names out of respect for the man. He actually broke down and showed me pictures from when he was in Vietnam. And he is just this little old dude. He was a farmer, nothing crazy. Very nice man, very respectful. I mean, just the nicest guy in the world. This dude stacked bodies. He was a badass. And, but he would sit there and yes, he still trains. His sons train martial arts and train in firearms and all this other stuff. And it's like he said, he goes, I don't want my sons to go to war, but they better know how to take care of their family and
Exactly.
themselves and
That's
defend
it.
themselves. He goes, I don't want to go to war. I don't want to kill anybody. He goes, I want a peaceful life. I want to be left alone. I don't want, he wants nothing like that. He wants peace and love all around him. But he's been there, he's done it. And he was trained how to do it, so he lived through it. And this is the thing, it's like, and even him, when you talk to him and some others I've talked to, it's like when they would confront people in a war zone that had no training, different things like that, and were backed into a corner and they would start to fight. It was a primal, animalistic, barbaric fight that these people brought.
It's
And he
like their
said the
eyes
number,
glaze over and they're
yeah,
freaking demons. Yeah.
in the number of times he says they would cause harm not only to what they were going after, but those around them that they were trying to protect. So this isn't just an anecdotal thing that I've seen just, bouncing around in law enforcement. This is something I've seen and listened to, and this is coming from a lot of people besides just myself. And I just think it's one of those things that as a society, everybody's approaching the problem the wrong way.
Yep, I think so.
And it becomes, no, we can't teach anything. We can't teach violence. We can't do this. No, we need to. We need to. Because people need to learn respect again.
Yeah, how are you going to teach somebody respect for human life
100%.
unless you show how fragile it is?
I mean,
Jesus.
this is people might say this is gross, but it's like we're a hunting family and we're a farming family. We butcher our own animals sometimes. We butcher our animals that we harvest, everything else. And it's like when you can show your children starting at a young age, and appropriately, there's times and places for everything. But when you can sit there and a deer, roughly the same size as a person, and you shoot a deer with a firearm, or you shoot him with a bow, or whatever else, and you take your child and you say, see this? This is what we use. Look at what it does.
Yeah.
This will
Look
do
at the damage
this.
that it does. Yep.
And all of a sudden it's like they're not dumb. They're smart, but they have to be taught. This is the other part that people freaking, I can't wrap my head around. They're not little adults. They're children. They need to be taught and instructed.
Yeah.
So when you do this and they actually see, wow, this is the outcome. A lot of times you'll notice that how they handle, if you've been teaching them how to handle like a 22 or something like that,
Sure.
how they handle it changes.
Oh yeah. Yep. Changed for me.
Yeah, and it'll change even more. And I hope to God my children never have to see it. But I've seen someone that's been shot, multiple people that have been shot at various parts of their body. So I can tell you what I know what it does to a human body. And then now that my daughter's going to be going into nursing, she dug out some of my combat medic training books and everything else. So she's seeing some of that, and because of her background, she's looking at it and going, wow, this is what that does. She's not grossed out about it, but she's like, wow, she's like, this does, I can't believe this caused that.
Right. Yeah,
there you
exactly.
go. So now you're putting one and one together to get two. This is the outcome. Holy cow. And it's that respect level gets built, discipline gets built, everything. And if you're not teaching it, you just end up with disaster.
Yeah. And I've heard people talk about how the video games are the violence in the video games and the realism in the violence in the video games is making it so that we have more violence. And I guess what I've seen is that the violence makes the children think that things don't hurt. So I think it's even more needed now is the training where yeah, I mean, take John Wick. You know, how
Hmm.
how big of a beating did he take? And everybody, everybody that I trained with, Curtis and I went and saw that together.
And
And through the whole movie, we're
he's
going,
sitting there going,
ooh.
"Yeah, right."
No, we're looking like he just hit the pavement after doing that. Ooh, yeah. And Curtis was the first person I ever rolled with, and that man almost made me cry. I was like, "Get the hell off me!" Like, I cannot get this man off me. That is
Yeah,
a very that is a very disconcerting feeling when another man has full control of you and you can't do a damn thing about it. And I was like,
yeah,
okay, I'm done. How do I get out of here? And he goes, you got to tap. And I was like, oh, I tap. Let me out, man. I will never forget that day.
yeah.
I
No,
think everybody needs to feel that in a controlled situation, so you know whether you're going to panic or whether you're going to pass out.
yeah, because I know, and I know I can speak from personal experience, and I'm willing to bet there's thousands and thousands of soldiers that can speak to this, and law enforcement that can speak to this, and thousands of citizens that have been in similar situations. You will have something that you've never experienced before kick in, and all of a sudden, whatever thought of being a badass, whatever
Yeah,
you want to
that
be,
goes out the
goes
damn
right
window.
out the freaking window. And you, in my case, I was working, so you hear me on the radio. There's a recording of me, like, "Oh my god," on the radio, and it's like looking at it now. I'm like, "Wow, I was a bitch," but at the same time, I've never had that kind of thing happen to me, and thankfully, it wasn't violence. It was a house fire,
Yeah,
and I thought somebody was still inside. But I look at it now, and thankfully, due to the training I've had, when I've been exposed to certain things, there's been multiple times where, and you and I've told you stuff about different things where it's like afterwards I'm like, holy shit, that happened,
yeah.
and I lived through it. Whew.
Some of
And
the shit,
it's
dude. Some of the shit. I don't know, man.
yeah, but this is the thing. I chose to go into that field, and I understand that. It's a little different than a regular citizen, but at the same time, freak things do happen.
Sure.
So it's like, would you rather be prepared for it?
Yeah.
And would you rather have your children prepared for it or just walk around blindly?
Yeah, and that's Nate talks about it. My fan talks about it. You're training attributes. You're not training.
Hmm.
You're training attributes, and a lot of times, I see a lot of people not sticking with the art long enough
Hmm.
to understand that they're training attributes. Like if you're taking any legitimate art and you're under 2-3 years, I think you're just doing yourself a disservice. Like a lot of people leave jujitsu at blue belt,
Hmm.
and the pain starts at purple, bro. I'm just saying. And then you talk to the black belts, and they're like the pain starts at black belt because then all
Oh.
the gloves are out. But you just stick with it and train the attributes because they will. The legitimate arts, Kali, JKD, Muay Thai, Jiu Jitsu, Judo, all those arts will give you traits and attributes that will just benefit you
Hmm.
way outside the mat. So
I agree with that 100%. And
boxing, yep,
yeah. And like I said, if you can get, and I'm 100% for it, you and I have done training classes with prior SWAT members, prior law enforcement, military, everything else when it comes to firearms and whatnot. And it's one of those that I think you would agree that the men we've learned from, they are capable
oh,
of.
tremendous. My God.
Oh yeah, they can bring hell down if they really wanted to, but they're most likely, what I would say, the least likely
Yeah.
to ever do anything.
Yep.
And I think you also get, like I said, we were talking about this, understanding the damage that can be done, understanding the consequences. But there comes, I think, even people start to, especially if you start them at a young age, they start to respect multiple things in life that aren't directly associated with it. They start to respect other life. They start to respect, I hate to use this term, they respect other people's feelings. That's not the right word.
Empathy. You already said it.
Yeah, it is
True
empathy.
empathy.
And well, that's it. It's true empathy when it's something where if what you're getting is valid. If it's some blue haired freak looking at me with more piercings than freaking the cattle in my area, and they sit there and they're like, "Oh my God, your words are violence," but I got no empathy for that.
Right.
Get the frig out of my face. You're a POS. I don't care. But when you're sitting there and you watch a young kid, a 10, 12-year-old kid, they see an older person that's obviously having mobility issues, and they drop something out of their cart and they're fighting to get it in their car, and they run over and pick it up. Here, I'll help you. I got this. What can I do to help you? That's huge. How often do you see that? You don't see that anymore.
Not not lately, no.
You know, and I think when you do that, you start to see that even more.
Yeah, I think you're right. I think the benefits are compounding for sure.
So it's, and I guess the other part of this too is when it comes to teaching, this is a little bit of a rabbit hole, but I'm going to go into it. With what's going on in the world today, if you aren't looking around and paying attention and you're not a little bit freaked out, I'm sorry, there's something wrong.
That and you're not going to see the dude on the white roof 150 meters away.
I wasn't even going to go there, but okay, I agree with you. I'm not.
You
Oh,
walked into it, man. When you're not paying attention, you're not going to see the dude.
oh,
Ah,
I love
yeah,
the new freaking Secret Service DEI hires. They're phenomenal. Anyway,
yeah, yeah.
no, it's,
We'll
I
stop
mean,
that rabbit hole, but that's
yeah, we're
you're
not
right.
going there. We're not going. We're not doing that section of it. We'll leave that tunnel alone. We'll go the other way. It's one of those where when I talk to guys that are in border patrol and stuff like that, and we talk about the people coming across the border that have criminal records and they're getting shipped everywhere and they're doing everything. A lot of these people coming out of like Venezuela and what was the other country I'm trying to think of? Was it Ecuador? I don't know. I'd have to go back
Yeah,
and talk to them.
Venezuela, Ecuador, Colombia. I heard.
Well, yeah, Colombia is a
Is it
big
just
one, but
is
it
is
might have been
is
Ecuador. But I know Venezuela is one of the big ones. A lot of these guys are literally getting released from prison and getting brought right up here.
yep, yep.
These guys
That's
are
what
in prison down there for the same stuff they're doing up here. They're raping, they're stealing, they're murdering, they're doing all this stuff, and people don't realize this. And I get wanting to help people, but there's a line.
no help.
Uh,
Bring the women and children. Leave the dudes home.
exactly. And then
Sorry.
then you turn around and we have massive amounts of Middle Easterners coming across the border that many of them have ties to terror groups. It's just the reality of it.
Yeah.
We have massive, massive numbers of Chinese coming across the border, and they're all military
For
age
what?
men.
That's I
Well,
don't get it.
I'm not going to go down that rabbit hole
Yeah, yeah.
either.
And I'm just yeah. I mean, we know why, but it's
Yeah,
just pay attention. People say you shouldn't profile. It's racist. Fuck that.
yeah,
Okay, I'm
pretty
paying
much.
attention to everybody. You know,
It's yeah, you pay attention to everybody, and when you do
I'm
this,
an
it's
equal
like,
opportunity asshole.
and that's why we're friends.
Yes.
Anyway, it's yeah, 100%. It's and right now we just had a perfect example of this with the laws being the way they are, and we're not locking up bad people. We're not doing this stuff. We had a guy come in. The guys hooked up, and he fought with us literally from the moment we. And what it started off as was literally it should have just been, "Hey, how you doing? Can I get your info? Chatting with you a second. Okay, you have a nice day." No, instead he decided to attack a police officer. Didn't have a weapon, just did it with his fists. And by the time we were done, he was released on his own recognizance later in the evening. And as he walked out, he told the troopers, "I'll see you guys again in a couple of days. And I'm going to beat somebody's ass." And okay,
Okay.
so this is these are the people that are being allowed to run around and do this stuff.
Yep.
And that same person looking at his criminal history has no issue going after if he saw you and your wife and kids out. If he felt the need, he has no issue going after you guys. And at least in my case, because we are friends, because I look at your wife and your children as friends, as extended family,
Same here.
I'm at least confident enough to know that I don't got to worry about the big man. I don't got to worry about his family. We could all go out as a group, and I could say, "Hey, I got to take off and go do something." I don't ever have to worry about it.
Yep. Passing
Big
the
guy's
torch.
got it.
I'm
He wants to take
I'm
off.
the
I'm
sentry.
there. We'll do
Yeah.
whatever. And this is the thing. It's the way the world is right now. I just think this needs to be done. You need to do it as a dad, 110%, and you need to make sure your kids are doing it. You need to train this. We cannot have any more of this weak people, weak society BS.
The fear of our society was built on the fear of consequences, violent consequences, and those violent consequences from law enforcement are being taken away.
100%.
So
And you could
we
even
have
go
to,
back.
the same consequences, just different dealers of those consequences. So,
Oh, yeah. Mm-hmm.
yep.
It's, and you could even go back. It's like the founding of this country was founded by violent men who were fighting for what they believed was a good cause. And after that, the reason we have won 2 world wars, and up until our government started sitting there saying, well, we need to,
Lower the stairs.
they really started playing politics and holding us back. The American people were a good, violent people. We were under control. We had law and order in the United States. Everybody had respect for each other for the most part. Everybody went to church on Sunday. Everybody, you said hello, good morning, good afternoon, thank you,
Showed respect.
please. You know, men went out. They dressed in a suit and tie when they had to go to town. Freaking,
Yep.
that was done. Our society was made by men that had the
They did that.
capability of great, great violence. They were warriors in gardens. They were not gardeners in a war zone.
Yep. That's that's a good that's a good outro, brother. That's a good one.
Well, with that being said, we'll wrap this up. Went a little longer than I wanted to, but I thought that
You're
was
good.
pretty good.
Yeah.
Anything you want to add, brother, before we close this out?
No, I think we hit it on the head. I don't think there's any place for nonviolent men in society. They
Agree with you
they tend to
110%.
turn into women lately. So
Oh, yeah. Anyway,
cut me off. Where's the
yeah,
hook?
we're not going there. We're not going there. Anyway, with that being said, hey, to all the dads out there, do the best you can. Keep your head up. Remember, you're not alone. There's plenty of us out there.
Here, here.